The first tremor. The day Earth trembled did not begin with thunder. It began with silence. For decades, humanity had looked outward with telescopes and probes, curious but complacent. Space had always seemed empty, distant, a cold stage where only stars played. That illusion shattered when the first signal came. It was faint, so faint that most dismissed it as static. But in an observatory in Chile, a young astrophysicist named Dr. Amarachin noticed a rhythm buried in the noise. Not a random flicker, not a pulsar's heartbeat, but something deliberate. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 more. A pattern. She sent her findings to agencies across the globe. Within days, satellites confirmed it. Something vast was moving through the Kuiper Belt, aligning itself with mathematical precision. Unlike any natural object, it corrected its trajectory with bursts of bluish light. Not gravity. Not chance. Intent. The world argued, as it always did. Some said it was a derelict craft, others an elaborate hoax. Conspiracy forums exploded. Politicians issued vague statements urging calm. But as the weeks passed, the truth grew undeniable. The object was approaching the moon. And it was not slowing down. When it arrived, the world watched. News channels broadcast live as the object eclipsed the lunar horizon. At first glance, it resembled a colossal honeycomb, hexagonal structures fused together in impossible geometry. Bioluminescent veins pulsed across its surface, casting a sickly green glow onto the moon's surface. It was not just a vessel. It was alive. And then came the tremor. It was not seismic, though buildings shook and oceans roared. It was not sound, though ears rang and glass shattered. It was deeper, stranger, something that reached inside every living thing. Bones hummed. Hearts skipped. Infants wailed. Animals bolted in blind terror. For the first time in millennia, every human on Earth felt the same thing at the same time, the vibration of another intelligence announcing itself. The message was clear, though no words were spoken: we are here. We are many. You are ours. Governments panicked. Fighter jets scrambled to the sky. Missile silos stirred awake. Civil defense sirens wailed across continents. But in Metropolis, above the chaos of fleeing crowds and car alarms, a streak of silver cut through the clouds. He was not born of Earth, but he had lived as its guardian for as long as people could remember. Some called him the last son of a broken star. Others whispered he was a god in human skin. He never confirmed nor denied, because it did not matter. All that mattered was that when Earth trembled, Superman was there. He hovered above the skyline, his red cape unfurling against the storm winds the Hive's presence churned. His senses extended outward, beyond skyscrapers, beyond atmosphere, brushing against the great Hive ship itself. The tremor resonated in his chest. Not random. Not meaningless. A signal. A summons. And in that instant, he understood, they had not come to talk. They had come to claim. Across the globe, the Hive ship split open. Massive pods, each the size of skyscrapers, detached and plunged through the atmosphere. They did not burn. A shimmering energy field protected them as they fell, carving fire across the sky. One struck farmland in Kansas. Another burrowed into the Atlantic. Others slammed into the outskirts of Paris, Mumbai, Lagos. Wherever they landed, the pods cracked open like eggs. From them poured creatures, chitinous, insectoid, wings buzzing with metallic resonance. Their eyes glowed with Hive fire. Their mandibles clicked in unison, and their claws shredded steel as easily as paper. The Hive had come. Soldiers fought valiantly. Jets unleashed missiles. Tanks roared. But for every creature destroyed, 10 more emerged. Acid spit melted armor. Wings generated sonic bursts that toppled buildings. Humanity's weapons, designed for war with itself, were ill-suited against a swarm bred for extinction. And then Superman descended. He struck the first swarm with a force that cracked the sky. Dozens of insectoids disintegrated under the shockwave. His heat vision blazed red, carving burning arcs through their ranks. His fists shattered carapaces harder than stone. For the first time since the tremor, humanity saw hope. Civilians stopped fleeing to cheer. Soldiers regrouped, emboldened by his presence. But the hive was endless. For every 100 he destroyed, thousands more spilled from the pods. Their coordination was perfect, their hunger unrelenting. Superman fought without pause, but even he could feel the weight of numbers pressing in. He was not infinite. His strength had limits. Above it all, the hive ship pulsed, watching. Superman glanced skyward, chest heaving. His eyes narrowed. "This isn't an invasion," he whispered to himself. "It's a harvest." The tremor deepened, resonating through his bones once again. A voice, not spoken, but felt, brushed against his mind. Cold, alien, undeniable. "You are not prey. You are a threat. You will be taken." He gritted his teeth, fists tightening. Whatever commanded the hive was aware of him. A queen, perhaps, or something worse. And it had marked him. Below, a young soldier stumbled, cornered by 3 insectoids. Superman blurred forward, shattering the creatures before they struck. He pulled the soldier to his feet, voice steady despite the chaos. "Get up. Earth needs you." The soldier, trembling, nodded. "Why, yes, sir." And so it began, the war that would decide Earth's fate. The hive had arrived in endless numbers. Humanity's weapons faltered. Cities burned. But above the despair, one figure shone. A man not of Earth, who chose Earth as his home. A man who had no equal in strength, but who drew his true power from the people he protected. On that day, when Earth trembled under alien wings, humanity did not fall silent. Because Superman was there. And he would not let Earth be taken without a fight. The Hive Queen's will. The hive ship hung above Earth like a second moon, vast and terrible, its hexagonal surface pulsing with eerie bioluminescence. From afar, it seemed silent. From within, it seethed with purpose. At the heart of the vessel, wrapped in layers of living architecture, sat the Hive Queen. She was not flesh in the way humans understood, nor machine, nor spirit, but something beyond, a fusion of all three. Her body sprawled across chambers the size of cities, limbs folded like blades, wings pressed tight against her carapace. Every nerve in her form was wired into the ship itself. She was the hive, and the hive was her. Through countless galaxies, she had stripped worlds bare. Some worlds had resisted with fire, and those worlds had burned. Others had begged for mercy, and their voices were silenced in the nectar pits. The hive consumed, always and without fail. But Earth was different. When her first swarms descended, she expected panic, collapse, easy consumption. Instead, she felt something she had not felt in 1,000 years, resistance. Not from the humans. They were brave, yes, but fragile. Their weapons stung, their courage flickered like candlelight. No, the true resistance came from one figure. A being wrapped in the form of prey, but not prey. A creature of impossible density, whose fists shattered her soldiers' shells as though they were brittle husks. His eyes burned with twin suns, and his movements carved gaps in the swarm that should have been impenetrable. The Hive Queen turned her awareness toward him. Through her warriors, she tasted his strength. Through their deaths, she measured his resilience. Through their eyes, she looked into his. And she understood something dangerous. He was not food. He was not cattle. He was a threat. On the ground below, Superman fought with unrelenting fury. The streets of Paris were a battlefield. The Eiffel Tower stood shrouded in smoke, its base swarming with insectoids. Soldiers fought desperately, using what weapons remained. Families huddled in metro tunnels, praying. Superman streaked through the skies, heat vision blazing as he sliced apart the creatures attacking civilians. He landed on the Champ de Mars, his fist striking the earth with such force that the shockwave flattened 100 hive soldiers. For a heartbeat, the battlefield grew still. Then, from the wreckage of a fresh pod, something new emerged. The creature was taller than any soldier, its carapace blackened with metallic sheen, its limbs thicker than steel beams. Acid dripped from its mandibles as it rose, its eyes glowing with the direct intelligence of the Queen. It was not another drone. It was a general. Superman squared his shoulders, drawing in a breath that steadied his pounding heart. He had felt the tremor of this moment before the creature appeared. The Queen's will had focused itself, pouring into this single vessel. The general bellowed, a guttural resonance that cracked windows and ruptured eardrums. Then it charged. The ground shook with each step. Cars flipped as it plowed forward. Superman met it head-on, their collision splitting the air with a thunderclap. He hammered his fists into its armored chest, each strike enough to crumble mountains, but the general endured. Claws raked across his side, cutting through fabric and flesh. Superman grunted as warmth spread beneath his ribs, blood, his blood. The crowd of soldiers and civilians gasped. For many, it was the first time they had ever seen him bleed. The general struck again, slamming him into the base of the tower. Iron beams groaned and bent. Superman's vision blurred for an instant, but he forced himself upright, teeth clenched. Not one step further. His voice was steady, though pain gnawed at his strength. The general lunged once more. Superman caught its claws, muscles straining, and the two locked together in a titanic contest of will. Sparks and acid sprayed as man and monster wrestled, each trying to crush the other. Above them, the Hive Queen watched. Her consciousness filled the general, guiding its movements, feeding it power. She whispered into Superman's mind, her voice like claws scraping glass. You cannot win. You are one. I am many. You will fall, and your world will feed me. Superman gritted his teeth, sweat and blood dripping from his brow. Maybe I can't stop you alone, he growled. But I'm not alone. And in that instant, humanity answered. The French soldiers, battered and bloodied, rallied. Tanks turned their cannons. Helicopters strafed the general with rockets. Civilians hurled bottles, bricks, anything they had. It was chaos, uncoordinated and desperate, but it mattered. For every shot fired, for every act of defiance, Superman felt his strength steady. Not in muscle, but in resolve. With a roar, he twisted the general's claws aside and drove his fist straight through its armored chest. Heat vision followed, burning a molten cavity through the creature's core. The general shrieked, flailed, then collapsed in a heap of smoldering chitin. The battlefield erupted in cheers. Superman staggered, chest heaving, blood staining his side. He lifted a hand, steadying himself against the bent beams of the tower. His eyes scanned the sky, where the hive ship pulsed in fury. You're listening, aren't you? He said, voice hoarse but defiant. Hear me now. Earth doesn't kneel. Not to you. Not to anyone. The tremor answered, rattling the city. The Hive Queen's fury surged across the planet, felt by every creature under her command. You will pay for this defiance. You will see your cities burn. And when you break, I will drink your last breath myself. Superman spat blood, then straightened, cape tattered but eyes still burning with fire. Then come down here and try. Far above, within the living corridors of the hive ship, the Queen stirred. Her wings unfolded, vast as mountains. Her body unfurled, stretching against the confines of her chamber. If this Superman wished to defy her, she would not waste endless soldiers. No, this world required a lesson, a demonstration of her true will. The harvest would wait. The Queen herself would descend. And when she did, Earth would learn the meaning of despair. The day Earth trembled. At dawn, the world awoke to fire. The hive ship's glow deepened, casting green shadows across continents. Pods rained down like burning stars, punching into oceans, deserts, and cities alike. Their landings shook the crust of the earth. For the first time in history, every seismograph in every nation blared at once. Humanity called it an earthquake. It wasn't. It was the hive taking root. In New York, pods slammed into Manhattan, disgorging rivers of insectoid soldiers. They climbed skyscrapers like ants swarming a carcass, tearing glass and steel apart with claws and acid. Civilians screamed as the swarm poured into streets and subway tunnels. In the Pacific, titanic shapes breached the waves. Not pods, but leviathans bred for aquatic war, scaled monsters with glowing mandibles, longer than aircraft carriers. They snapped battleships in half and scattered fleets like toys. In the Sahara, pods cracked open to release swarms that darkened the sky. Their wings produced ultrasonic pulses, collapsing sand dunes into avalanches that buried entire refugee camps. The hive had unleashed its arsenal, tailored for every environment. And for the first time, Earth truly trembled, not from alien signals, but from fear. Superman was everywhere. He tore through the skies, his speed a blur. One moment, he was in Manhattan, ripping a swarm away from a collapsing bridge. The next, he was plunging into the Pacific, splitting waves with his body to drive a leviathan back beneath the depths. He flew to the Sahara, clapping his hands with thunderous force to scatter the swarms choking the sky. But even he could not be everywhere at once. For every life he saved, others were lost. Cities burned. Nations wept. Humanity fought, but the hive was endless. By noon, estimates suggested that millions were already dead. And still, the hive poured more soldiers from the sky. At the United Nations bunker beneath Geneva, world leaders huddled. Generals shouted. Maps were strewn across tables, covered in red blotches marking fallen cities. Panic bled through every corner of the room. Detonate the warheads, a general from the east demanded. We'll bury them with nuclear fire. That's suicide, snapped another. The hive will survive radiation. We won't. Then surrender, cried a third. Better slaves than corpses. The shouting built until the chamber shook with more than voices. A sudden gust of wind swept maps from the table. Papers flew like snow. Superman stood in the center of the chamber, shoulders scorched, cape torn, his chest streaked with blood and ash. No, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. We don't surrender. Not today. Not ever. The room fell silent. He stepped forward, his eyes fierce though exhaustion weighed on every movement. Weapons of fear won't save us. Neither will hiding. You think the hive will stop at our surrender? No. They'll drain our oceans, strip our forests, grind our bones into fuel. You can't negotiate with hunger. He paused, meeting every gaze. But we can fight. Not as nations. Not as enemies. As one world. Together. The leaders stared at him, some skeptical, some inspired, all silent. It was the Secretary General, her face lined with exhaustion, who spoke first. And if we stand together? What then? Superman's voice softened, but it carried iron. Then we have a chance. For the first time in history, humanity united. Scientists across nations shared their secrets. Engineers hacked captured hive tech, turning it into weapons. Guerrilla fighters learned weak points in the creature's armor, joints behind the mandibles, soft tissue beneath wings. Civilians built barricades beside soldiers. Farmers welded old tractors into war machines. Children carried supplies to the front. Earth became a single battlefield. And at the heart of it all stood Superman, not just as a warrior, but as a symbol. His presence alone was enough to steady trembling hands, to rally the broken-hearted, to remind the world of something the hive could never understand, hope. By nightfall, the hive grew desperate. The Queen's resonance thundered across the world, her psychic command sharper, hungrier. The swarms pressed harder, clawing at every city, every trench, every desperate holdout. In London, insectoids flooded Westminster, but were driven back by civilians armed with nothing more than rifles and firebombs. In Tokyo, swarms filled the skies, but engineers used stolen hive wings to create jamming devices, scattering the coordination of the enemy. In Lagos, street fighters lured creatures into bottlenecks, turning alleys into kill zones. Humanity adapted. And the hive faltered. For the first time, the queen tasted something she had not in ages, resistance strong enough to wound her. In Metropolis, Superman fought until his body screamed. He had torn apart hundreds of thousands of creatures, hurled leviathans into the sun, carried civilians by the thousands to safety. Yet still, he pressed on. As he stood on the ruined streets, bloodied but unbroken, a young girl emerged from the rubble. She could not have been more than 8. Dirt streaked her cheeks, but her eyes burned with the same fire he carried. She tugged on his torn cape. "Mister, you're not gonna let them win, right?" Superman knelt, his battered frame folding gently to her height. His voice cracked with exhaustion, but the words were steady. "No," he said. "Not while I'm standing." The girl smiled through her tears. "Then I'll stand too." Around them, others heard. Soldiers, civilians, wounded and weary, all straightened their backs. They had lost homes, families, everything. But they had not lost their will. And in that moment, Superman knew. The hive might be endless, but so was the human spirit. The queen had misjudged her prey. High above, the hive ship quaked. The queen's wings unfurled within her chamber, vast enough to eclipse mountains. Her fury shook the vessel. She had thrown millions into the maw of this world, and still the Kryptonians stood. Still the humans resisted. Her will spread across every soldier, every pod, every swarm. Enough. The harvest would wait. The queen herself would descend. And the day Earth trembled would become the night it nearly broke.